Welcome to Pastors and People 2, the podcast where spirituality and daily living intersect. Your host, a Methodist pastor, invites you on a journey through the sacred pages of the Bible, exploring how its timeless wisdom illuminates our path in this ever-changing world. Each week, we'll delve into scripture, share stories of inspiration, and reflect on current events through the lens of faith. Whether you're seeking guidance, inspiration, or simply a moment of peace in your busy day, join us as we discover together how the divine can transform the ordinary into the extraordinary. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and let's start the conversation. This is Pastors and People 2, where every story matters and every voice is heard. Welcome aboard.
Hello and welcome to Pastors and People 2. I am Pastor Charlene Thomas, and I'm here with my husband, Dave. And
hello.
And our dog, Pebbles, is walking around.
Yes, you may hear her in the background.
You might hear the jingle of her collar. Right now she's under the table, happily laying at my feet. She had to stay home today. She comes to the office with me. Usually definitely on Wednesday. Usually definitely.
Right. Yeah.
Usually on Wednesdays. Today she could not come with me, and she was very salty about it this morning. She's under the table.
Okay.
So, so she might make an appearance at some point.
You never know what that dog's going to do.
Yeah.
Never. So we had a very interesting Sunday service.
I would think you would love it, of all people.
Oh, I totally enjoyed it.
Totally enjoyed it. What was your favorite? This is Dave's favorite thing that I do. So when we ride together, for those of you that are new to the podcast, I preach 3 times on Sunday. I preach at 9 and 10:15 in the morning, and then 6:30 at night in these United Methodist churches that I serve. And in the car between the 9 o'clock service and the 10:15 service, I will turn to Dave and say, "So, what was your takeaway from my sermon?
What did I get out of it?"
So tell me your favorite part of it was May the 4th. Then we had May the 4th be with you. And so we had a Star Wars, it wasn't themed. It just had a little, I think I said intergalactic flair.
Right. Yeah. No, it wasn't themed per se. You did mention it a few times. My favorite was when you were talking about it and the obvious throwbacks to the movie quotes.
Obvious to you.
Obvious to me.
Obvious to
there was
Dave
blank
in one of
faces on 98% of the people in the church.
That might be a low estimate. I think it was you and the other Dave that were enjoying that the most. Yeah, so the call to worship, I got some inspiration from Hacking Christianity, I think. He had written some things, and I sent that to you and said, hey, should we have a May the 4th Star Wars inspired worship?
And I said yes.
You did
because
not.
I thought you were joking. Look back at the text messages.
I said, should I do this? And you're like, really?
I said yes first.
I don't know.
And then I really didn't think you were going to do it. And then you told me you were going to do it.
Why
and I
didn't
said,
you
really?
think? Why didn't you think we were going to do it?
Because I would wonder. I myself was wondering about the what people would say in the pews. And so if I'm wondering it, I usually think you're wondering it. And sometimes you go a little on the safe side.
I do. Sometimes I do go on the safe side. I've done, usually in the summertime, worship lightens up a little bit. And so I will usually do a movie series. I've done Inside Out, the Pixar movie. I've done Toy Story. I've done a sermon series around Mr. Rogers. And all of those things, whether it be movie or books or TV shows, you can find all sorts of gospel messages, Jesus' work in the midst of all of that stuff. And my favorite Toy Story is, I think, Forky, who's in the third or 4. Okay.
He's in 4.
I'm not as good at remembering movie stuff as you. So in Toy Story 4, there's Forky, who is a plastic spork and he was in the trash, and the little girl went and dug him out of the trash and made a toy out of him. He was like a craft supply that had been thrown away. And so I said, if that's not the gospel, I don't know what it is.
Well, it's amazing to me because when you really look at that scene, I don't know if the animators really thought about this, but when you look at that scene, I think nobody's sharing any supplies with the little girl. She's new in the school or whatever. And it's Woody that runs around and grabs stuff. He's grabbing supplies from different things, and the fork was in the trash. None of those things were animated throughout anything. And by animated, I mean alive. And she put those pieces together, and then it became alive.
And it was a new identity offered through the creator's hands. In this case, the creator was the little girl.
Right.
And so what was trash then became a treasured item. And then throughout the rest of the movie, Forky keeps trying to throw itself away again because it only identified as trash.
Right.
He didn't see that, hey, this is because of this little girl's belief in who I am, I'm something more than trash. I'm something more than what I was. But Forky had a hard time grasping the fact that I can have this new identity and it can redefine me. And if that's not what discipleship is like, I mean, how often do we as disciples see nothing but deficit and not what the Creator, God, sees in us? And so I totally think that there's the gospel message. And I didn't really hesitate with Star Wars. I don't know why I didn't, because like you said, sometimes I do kind of err on the side of caution with some of those things. But I think there's it's a greater teaching tool when we use those kind of cultural things as ways or means to share the gospel. I think the larger idea is that if you take what is familiar and you share the God within it, because I believe God is in all things, even Star Wars, which you pointed out, George Lucas grew up in the Methodist Church, and so his faith kind of wove its way into his storytelling. And it is a good versus evil, power versus the oppressed, and how this rebellion is fighting for the people that are marginalized, the people that don't have the wealth and the power and the control. That's the gospel. That's Jesus came to fight for the marginalized. And we in the United Methodist Church take a vow to fight injustice and oppression in whatever form, whatever ways they present themselves. So I hope that people got, and I hope that you understand, though, that while there is some jest to this, there is power in using familiar terminology and familiar stories and familiar images to teach the ways of Jesus. And that's what Christ did. He used teaching stories. He used parables like about fishing and farming and things to be able to communicate in familiar terms to people so they can understand. So if you take unfamiliar concepts and use familiar words or context, it can help break down a lot of barriers. That's why things like The Chosen are meaningful teaching tools. The movies that you see, King of Kings and The Last Supper and The Passion, it takes a modern media. You should not have petted her. That was your first mistake. That was your first mistake, was petting her.
And then I took the leash off, so hopefully she makes less noise. But.
Yeah. But anyway, back to it's very powerful to use things that people are familiar with. And I think it's in the way of Christ to do that. So I had my argument,
ready, prepared.
I had my remarks prepared for if people came and were like, that was disrespectful. People have definite opinions in the church, freely shared.
And you have said many times that you're not going to like 100% of the services you attend. The average is 70%.
So that was actually Pastor Chip Freed who said that. He said he tells people when they join his churches, he tells people when they come, you're going to like about 70% of what happens here. And 30% you're just not going to like. But when you're in your 70% that you love, somebody's in their 30.
Absolutely.
And when you're in your 30, they're loving life in their 70. So, but we have a tendency, and I think we do this in all things, but for me, it just is most impactful. We have a tendency to look for a church that is 100.
Yes.
That is 100%, and it doesn't exist.
It doesn't.
And because churches are filled with people, and people are flawed, and people have hang-ups, and people make mistakes. And though church is supposed to be a place of grace, oftentimes we aren't always grace-filled. And that's hard. And so I had my remarks ready. I had my defense set. And a lot of times I will just say, which I said on Sunday, I said, listen, some of you are going to think this is ridiculous, but here's what we're doing and here's why we're doing it. And so, and I think I made a joke. I can be kind of self-deprecating a little bit. And I said, listen, God knit me together. He knew my sense of humor. He also knew me when he called me here. So he knew these sorts of things were going to happen.
Absolutely
and
did.
I have been ordained to stand in this place. And so here I am, like it or lump it.
And you never know what you're going to say or what material you're going to use that actually connects with somebody and brings them a little closer. And maybe somebody will go and watch that movie and or a series of movies and get something totally different out of it now.
And not even for themselves. What if you go talk to, your kids or your grandkids, your grandkids and say, oh, that just so reminds me of how Jesus was. He fought for the people that didn't have anything. Just an offhanded comment like that can plant a seed that, wait a minute, what do you mean Jesus was like that? More and more people were 3 generations out from regular church attendance, which means that for 3 generations, grandma and grandpa, mom and dad, and child have not been in church. They have no idea what Jesus was about. And so the only Bible they read is us. And so you can make kind of an offhanded comment where you say, oh, every time I watch a movie like this where it's good versus evil, I think about Jesus. And that's what he did. He came to fight evil. And that's what we do in the United Methodist Church. We try to fight oppression and injustice. So.
And how many people nowadays reading the parables and stuff in the Bible can relate to somebody throwing seeds to plant their crops or to throw nets to catch fish? We have no idea. And it I think disconnects us a little bit. So if we can have a medium that spans that gap, that can show us those connections to what we're doing now is related to what went on then.
Yeah, the story isn't that much different. The context is vastly different. And I think that too lends itself to why it's important to understand the ancient context, because if I said to you today, oh, somebody got bit by a radioactive spider, what are you going to think?
Spider-Man.
Spider-Man. Most people know Spider-Man. If 100 years ago, they what?
Yeah.
It's a different context. And so we need to understand what the ancient context was of those letters and stories and writings and laws and all of those things. It's important. Otherwise, you don't get the fullness of the scripture. And that's where you get kind of in the weeds, because if you don't know, just like the Spider-Man reference, that's easy for us to comprehend because it's our culture.
Right.
It's our context. We're familiar. They were familiar with the writings. And so we have to familiarize ourselves with that. It's important.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to ask, did you get any criticisms about Sunday?
I don't think so. I don't think I have yet. I got some compliments, that was cool. People are like, oh, I never thought about that. Or I never, Pastor Johnny, who is a retired ordained elder, said, I never did that, but there were times that I thought that there were parallels or things that you could pull, storylines you could pull out of Star Wars, and I never did it, but that was really cool. So, and that's always affirming to hear from him.
Yeah.
Bless his heart, he is very affirming of me. And he doesn't know this, but this is terrible. The first time that he came to the church, and he and his wife, lovely people, and he said, oh, my name's Johnny. I'm retired West Ohio. And I inside went, oh no. Because a pastor preaching to a pastor, that is the worst feeling. And he said, oh, we really like the church and we're looking for a new home church because I'm retired. And I said, well, Pastor Amy's over at Faith. Isn't that horrible? That was my own insecurity.
Sure.
Because they have since joined St. Paul's and they are amazing people. And he's so affirming of me. Because I think the thing that people don't understand is, I serve 5 churches. Primary, I serve 2, soon to be 3, where I'll be primarily appointed. And that's a lot of people across this space in 2 counties. It's, several hundred people in our congregations. And if every one of them has an opinion about something, and every one of them comes and individually shares their opinion with me, that's a lot of opinions. And though I always appreciate feedback if it's given in love and encouragement,
sure.
I am the most, I think, open. I'm very human in the pulpit. There have been times that I've just said, look, guys, I'm struggling. Or, here's this victory. I very much am a person in our faith community. So I share my hurts, my hangups, and my hopes and dreams. And a person might think, oh, I'm going to tell Pastor Charlene that I think this went wrong today. Always welcomed. But you start racking those up, you might just think you're one person giving me some feedback. But that's hard.
Sure.
It's hard because if you get people that, I'm not for everybody. Everybody doesn't love me. I'm a big personality. I sometimes don't have a filter and will say things. And there are some people that love that because you are going to get the same me, whether it's Sunday morning or Tuesday night or Saturday. This is the only Charlene there is. And other people don't love it as much. I'm not what people would think of a traditional clergy person is like. And so there are people that find that great, and there are people that not so much. And people they share freely with me. And there have been seasons where it has made me struggle.
Oh, absolutely. And going back to having a pastor in your congregation.
Yeah. Which I love. Lynn and Johnny, I love you.
It made me think about my job and where I'm at currently. I believe I'm good at what I do. I've been doing it for a handful of years now. Well, more than a couple handful of years now, which is weird to say. But there's a guy on 3rd shift. I've only talked to him a few times. I know some of his background, and just seeing some of the stuff that he's been able to do he doesn't use our CNC equipment. He uses all the manual stuff.
So he does it by his own hand.
By his own hand, even though I'm told that he used to work in a place where he wrote CNC code and he optimized it so that it would run faster and better. And he prefers to use the manual stuff. And he gets excellent results, like better than a CNC, I believe, which is probably why he does it. And I know he's good at what he does. But if something were to happen and I was put on the shift with him, I would suddenly become insecure in what I'm doing because he's got so much more experience, which makes him so much more skilled, I believe. And so I would become so insecure working next to somebody like that.
Sure. It's just, I think every time that someone, a colleague or a peer appears in your kind of your domain, it sparks some insecurities in you, whether you admit it or not.
Right.
Absolutely. I think it's just humanity's, our need to be liked, be appreciated, be respected. I mean, that's an inherent need in all of us to feel valued and appreciated. So, yeah. But Pastor Johnny is so affirming. And he has come to me with all sorts of ideas and he'll say, "No, I'm just sharing this," because he never wants me to feel as if he's posturing,
right,
kind of telling me. But he's had wonderful ideas and I have benefited from our discussions. I've benefited from some of his ideas, and he and his wife are faithful volunteers. They're present because I think they understand how much presence means in the church. I mean, it's one of our vows. We vow to be present, and I take those seriously. And I know a lot of faithful people who do. So yeah, he's been a blessing. I'm glad he didn't listen to my fear talking and go and check out Amy's church, which he would have ended up with me anyway. So
right, yeah.
Which over there's already a retired elder. So everywhere I go now, I feel like there's going to be a pastor.
That's hilarious. And they have added so much to the Bible study. The Bible study that we have at Republic on Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening, early evening. I love how it's kind of structured itself. I think it's an awesome Bible study for everybody, not depending on where you are in your track.
It's inclusive of, it doesn't matter where you are. We have got a 10-year-old who comes. Yeah. Bailey, she is a rock star.
She is.
She comes with her grandma. We've got an 18-year-old. We've got individuals with identified different needs. We've got an retired ordained elder. We've got a man who's co-leading the Bible study with me right now, who was a Sunday teacher for decades.
Yep.
And then we have people that don't even attend the Methodist Church. We've got a couple of Catholics. It is a cool glimpse into what Christianity can be.
It absolutely is. And you kind of take new Christians kind of by the hand a little bit, and then there's a lot of old Christians in there that are learning stuff, or experienced Christians, not old Christians, but just the span, the makeup of that Bible study.
Yeah.
You have been a pastor for a few years now. And
9.
And then you have Pastor Johnny, who's a retired elder. And you have Richard, like you said, is co-leading. And that's all a lot of different experience in doing different things. And you all are adding your own, I don't want to say interpretations, but your own experience into the Bible study. And I think everybody can get a little piece of everybody.
Well, and
in there.
I think everybody puts their own. It's like It's like a stew. You know, when you would have those campfire stews where everybody kind of brought a can of whatever they had at home and then you threw it all in and it made this delicious soup. That's kind of like what that study is, because everybody contributes. Everybody talks.
Contributes, yep.
Everybody, you know, chimes in, and sometimes it's just ridiculous how far off topic we get, but often we end up being somewhere that somebody needs to be.
Sure.
And
that
so
happens pretty often.
I was a little, I mean, we always talk about differing opinions, and if you looked at us as far as socioeconomic status, you probably have the entire spectrum. If you look at life experience, education level, you probably have the entire spectrum. We have college graduates. Pastor Johnny's got his master's degree. We probably have, you know, people that may have just graduated high school, no higher ed, all sorts of job experience, white collar, blue collar, and we have political beliefs, that we have
all
the
over.
spectrum. But we have all been and it's helped restore my faith in humanity. We've all been very cognizant of, this is what I believe, that's what you believe, and it's okay. And you can believe A, and I can believe B, and I'm probably going to run you a line of crap about it.
Yeah.
In love. But at the end of the day, I look at you because you're my brother in Christ, or you're my sister in Christ, and it can be okay. As long as we have that in common,
Absolutely.
the rest of the stuff can work itself out. And I have people that are very passionate about beliefs in certain things that are able to just, we're not going to do that. We're not going to argue about it. We're not going to, you know, disagree. We're going to disagree, but we're not going to harm one another.
Right.
And that's like a safe pocket in the world right now, because they're living out that call that we are all one faith community. And it's this beautiful, you know, spectrum of belief and life experience and tradition, and it's okay. As long as we have Jesus in common, as long as we have our beliefs around him in common, then we can figure the rest out. And as a person, that is so affirming, because you just don't find it anywhere.
You don't. And,
anywhere.
And what's sad is you see a lot of Christians, I'm bringing up the internet and social media, you see a lot of people who say they are Christians are digging at other people, or using the Bible to hurt people. And I'm going to say, if you're using the Bible to hurt somebody, you don't know the Bible.
I think the worst thing that you can do, and probably the thing that hurts God's heart most, is weaponizing Scripture.
Absolutely.
And you can find anything to solidify any argument.
Yep.
If you cherry pick, and I think that weaponizing God's word is just horrible, and it hurts. I just wish that people would just pause and respond rather than react, which is hard for me. I'm a reactor. And I'm trying to, as I mature in life, learn to respond rather than react. And it takes work, and it takes self-control, and it takes all of those, you know, fruits of the Spirit, long suffering and all of those things. But I just wish people would just give people a break.
Yeah. Because we could all use some grace.
Yeah. And I think that's what, going back to you saying, you know, did you get any criticism? I hate that sometimes I have to think forward into, okay, if somebody's going to have an opinion about this, what could it be? So that I can then think about it from all sides.
So that you can respond and not react.
Yeah, and part of it is self-preservation a little bit too, because sometimes people forget. That's one of the reasons for this podcast, pastors and people too. Sometimes people forget that people in leadership, and not just pastors, but mayors, city council people, if you're in any level of government, if you are in any sort of service industry, if you are serving people in any way, sometimes people forget you're a person. And so if they come at you sideways because you did something that they don't necessarily appreciate, you can tell me that. Absolutely. If you come and say, hey, I have a question about that because I don't understand why, or what was your thinking, we can talk all day long. But when you come at me sideways, like, I'm a person, and it bothers me, it hurts me. And I think if we could all just hit pause before we and think about what we're saying or what we're doing. And I'm a Rotarian. I'm in the Rotary Club of Tiffin, and we have this thing called the 4-way test. And it's supposed to be a test of the things we think, say, and do. And you run it through these 4 markers, and if it passes through all of them, then you're good to proceed. And is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Yeah, I've been to a few of your meetings, and I've recorded some stuff for the Rotary. And whenever you guys do the 4-way test, I'm thinking that's how everybody should look at everything you do. And I wish even more Christians would just look at those and go by them. It's not just for Rotary.
No, and I think if our young people could learn as young people to stop and think about, okay, is this the truth? Do I know this to be true before I react or respond to it or say it or repeat it or type it, or and is it fair to all concerned? I mean, these are Christian foundational thoughts. Jesus wants us to only speak the truth, and he wants us to not testify against our neighbor, and these are all, things that are mentioned, and is it beneficial to all concerned, and will it build goodwill and better friendships? That could be life changing. And it has been for me. And please understand, I screw this up multiple times a day. But if you just think about it, if you have the idea of, okay, I'm going to try to live into this, that improves so much. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know. I'm not here to say, oh, poor me. But I'm also here to talk about kind of what happens behind the pulpit.
Right.
And I think people forget sometimes that behind the pulpit stands a person. And they have faults and they have failures, and they're going to make mistakes, and they're going to let you down. I've said things that have hurt people's feelings. I will be the first to fall on my sword. And recognize when I've done those things. But it's a way for you to care for your pastor, your leaders in anything. I don't know.
So when you face maybe seasons of some criticism from people, when you're getting a little stressed, and even when you're facing some self-doubt, who do you go to? Who do you talk to? Who do you rely on in those circumstances to reinforce what you're doing, maybe? Or
it's hard because you are a first line of defense. You're one of the first people I talk to, but at the same time, I think, this is his church too, and I'm his wife, and I know things have happened in front of you that you have been like, I wanted to do something, But I knew if I said something as your husband, that was going to undermine you as the pastor.
Right.
And so I've had to try to step back. But inside, you're like, oh, how could you say that to my wife, to my pastor? So I try not to talk to my family because my churches are their church. And so if I come home and I'm constant, I mean, I do. When I get super frustrated, absolutely
I
do.
tell you, you can react to me
Yeah.
so that you can respond to whoever.
Yeah. But like with Dominic, I try to be careful because I don't want him to have negative feelings about the church or about people in the church. Because we saw we've seen with families and clergy children that begin to resent the church because they see mistreatment. And my churches, for the most part, are wonderful. But this is just humanity. You know, I've read of some very unhealthy churches. Church is just like everything else. It's got people in it, and people bring their stuff. So I try not to talk to you guys. I know I do. I have clergy. You know, I'm in a pastoral team, so I'll talk to Pastor Amy. I also have a mentor, Reverend Donna, and so I've gone to her for advice. I've had coaches at different times, and so I think that there are resources out there for professionals, for pastors that are looking for things. And our denomination and our conference is really good about trying to create space. COVID was tough.
Yeah.
Everybody was mad during COVID, and this isn't just a pastor thing. I mean, it was across the board, but no matter what you did, somebody was mad. If you closed the church, somebody was mad. If you kept it open, somebody was mad. If you said to mask, somebody was mad. If you said don't mask, somebody was mad. It didn't matter which way you turned, somebody was mad at you. That was very hard. I threatened to quit probably
Every day.
not every day. That's an exaggeration.
That is an exaggeration.
I did. I threatened to quit multiple times during COVID. That was hard. And I thought, you know, coming out of COVID, I thought, okay, we made it. We're good. Minimal damage to my churches. I know some churches that never came back from COVID. They just couldn't, you know, we saw it in all businesses, restaurants and theaters and all sorts of specialty business. And then, you know, this economic period is hard. You know, there's a lot of, and it seems like ever since COVID, it's just been a little bit of a roller coaster. We went through disaffiliations in the United Methodist Church, and we've gone through economic hard times, and the economy is still struggling. So I've been a pastor since 2016. I was only 4 years in when COVID hit. So pastoring has not been smooth during my career.
It really hasn't. You've had a lot of, and in actuality, your appointment has changed.
Right.
Almost every year. I mean, not quite every year, but almost every year, something has changed in your appointment.
And people have had opinions about that, let me tell you.
Oh, my goodness. Those don't stop, I don't think. And you would think, with the history of the Methodist Church,
Right.
that people know that, and they still act surprised.
Well, not even act surprised, but I guess I should be happy that when people are upset when appointment stuff happens, because
Sure,
I guess it means
yeah.
they like me. If everybody was like, oh, well, oh, man, United Methodism, whew.
I know where you can get some boxes.
See you later. Here's some, look, can I help you pack? I guess that would be a different worry. I'm like,
Yeah.
man, they don't seem sad that I'm moving. That's kind of weird, but yeah.
Well, I think we've done pretty good on the behind the pulpit stuff.
Yeah.
For the what in the world, I think I'm going to ask you something I didn't tell you I was going to ask you.
No.
This is kind of a surprise, I guess.
No.
But it's been something that I've kind of wondered here lately. Let's say, you know, member of your church comes in wants to meet with you. They sit down, and I guess it's a form of burnout, but they tell you, I know that Jesus is next to me. I know all the right answers to stuff, right? But I still feel disconnected. I feel like I've walked away even though I don't know how I did. They feel disconnected from their faith. They're still believers. They still know all the answers to stuff. They know, what the scripture says about things, but they feel disconnected. What do you tell that person?
So I think the first thing I would ask them is, what are you doing to connect?
Yeah.
So, I mean, if your computer battery, if the thing comes on, like it happened to me today, thought I was plugged in, and the warning came up and said, hey, your computer's about to die. And I'm like, I'm plugged in. So I checked the connection. That looked fine. And I went to the power strip. That looked fine. But the middle section where the box plugs in had come apart. So I was disconnected, even though by all appearances, everything looked fine. But somewhere on the chain, something is disconnected. So I guess that's the first thing I would say is, okay, talk to me about are you doing devotions? Whatever that looks like. Are you praying? Are you attending worship? Are you going to communion? And if they're like, yep, I'm doing my devotions every day. Yep, I'm praying faithfully morning, noon, and night. Yep, I'm going to church. Yep, I'm going to communion. I'm in small group. If they're doing all the things, then I think I would ask them what other things are happening in life. Is there something else that is weighing on you that maybe you wish you could see God working in and you don't? So I think we would look at circumstances. And then sometimes you need to shake it up. Sometimes even the most faithful Christian might need something new to stir up. Like, would you maybe consider a walk to Emmaus, a spiritual retreat, a silent retreat sometimes, and we talk too much, even to God. And so, okay, what if you try this? That's very guided, very structured, do something different just to kind of shake it up. And then I think as we work through all those things, just keep talking about where is it broken until you find that piece that has disconnected and try to repair.
That's really a very good analogy for that.
Praise the Lord that my computer got unplugged today.
Because how many, there's like 1, 2, 3, potentially 4, depending on how the box is set up, 4 different connections from the outlet to your computer.
Right.
And how many connections do we have to our faith and God? We have, you can do podcasts now like ours. Hint, hint, share, tell everybody. There are devotions. There's online devotions. There's like the Bible app. You can have devotions sent to you daily. And they have, reading stuff. There's Bible studies. There's home churches. There's all different kinds of ways that you can connect. And sometimes I think that what you're currently doing may become stale.
Yeah.
And so changing it up might be a different way to...
Yeah. Excuse me. Like for me, music is like a straight connection up to God. But even in that, I might have to look for new music or immerse myself, go to a concert or a worship festival, something where the music is even presented. So even though this is a known track for me to connect to God, I might need a new way to expose myself to that. So, yeah, that was a good question, though.
Yeah, I don't know why that kind of question has been on my mind lately, but it has. Maybe because right now I'm not feeling as connected.
So how's your...
See, I don't do the things.
And that
I don't
lot
participate
of times,
in the things.
A lot of times what I find is they'll go, oh, well, I used to do that, but then my kids, it's summertime, so my kids are out of school. So I'm out of my routine, and they're there and they're loud and they're, and so sometimes you have to just look at the circumstance and like, okay, how do I make this work?
Right.
How can I restructure this? Because things fall off and fall away, and we don't really pay attention until someone says, well, how's it going with your, with your faith life, with your discipleship walk, with your, your spiritual disciplines. They're called disciplines for a reason.
Right.
And how are you doing? And well, now that you say that, I haven't really done XYZ. Well, that's where I'd start probably.
Right.
And maybe it fell away because it was time for a change.
Sure.
So
Sure.
you just have to be honest with yourself. And another thing that I tell people is don't try to force yourself into some sort of spiritual discipline that's not you, because it's not going to work. I have the attention span of like a toddler. And so I'm really good for a short amount of time. So when the movie War Room came out, I wanted a prayer closet. I wanted to do the thing that the older lady did in the movie.
You have claustrophobia.
I would. It was good in theory, Dave. So I would also fall asleep. Like if I sat for that long,
Sure,
I'm
yeah.
not praying. I'm asleep. I am a Post-it note prayer. I am a keep people that need prayer on a Post-it note in front of me so that I can look at that and say, Lord, help Joe. He is suffering with anxiety and he needs your presence. And I might say that 15 times a day, every time I look at the Post-it note. Mm-hmm. That's how I'm a prayer warrior, how I'm a prayer. There are people that can close themselves up into rooms and just, storm the heavens. That doesn't mean that my Post-it prayer isn't as meaningful to God as the person locked up in a prayer closet. God designed all of us with our own unique talents and abilities, and we're like a beautiful tapestry, and together it's amazing. But I used to shame myself because I couldn't do what that person did, like journaling for a while. Oh, I'll journal. I'm not journaling.
Yeah.
I don't have the attention span for that stuff. And I have too much stuff going on and I get too scattered. I get all the supplies and it looks really good. And then I don't do it. Then I feel bad about myself because I don't do it. So then I beat myself up. Like that is ridiculous.
Right.
Absolutely ridiculous. Know who you are, love who you are, do what you do well, and give them heaven.
Oh, you're ending the podcast?
Before you come up with any more unscripted questions.
Because I had one too.
Oh,
but
that's fine.
All right. Are
No,
you
go
sure?
ahead. Yeah. I kind of.
And I will preface it by my situation. So I run AV for your churches.
Right.
And so I find it difficult sometimes to pay attention to what you're doing because I'm running AV.
Right.
Okay? Whether it be the computer or the soundboard or both or, whatever. So I'm looking forward to you having faith because they've already been doing their sound stuff. They've got a system set up. I'm going to walk in there and I'm going to be able to worship.
Are you sure?
I'm going to try really, really hard to
I think it's important.
just go in there and be a worshiper.
Well, I think you should try to structure it that if they ask you, because I know they've already asked you some questions about, before when you guys were here and what did you do? I know you have a set schedule here at St. Paul's. So if they do need your help on AV, try to structure it so somewhere every Sunday you can just be a worshiper.
Well, see, the problem with that is, because I've thought about that, but the problem with that is when I'm in the pew, I'm watching AV. And if it doesn't seem like it's going right, or it might not go right, I want to be available and catch it to tell the people currently running AV. Mm-hmm. And I love Carter and Ben. They do a fantastic job. And there's only been one or two times that I had to get up and help, and it was because something was way weird. but my mind is still there whether I have to help or not.
Wow.
So going into faith, they have already, we've already talked about some things, but they've got it handled. If I can lead some advice, fine. If I can fill in, when people go on vacation, great. Because one of the guys, when he's on vacation, he runs the live stream from wherever he's at. They had to get that set up. But anyway, I'm looking forward to being able to go into faith and just worship. Mm-hmm. So my question is, you're the pastor.
Yeah.
How do you worship?
Not when I'm leading worship. I don't.
Right.
You just don't. And maybe there are people out there I have worshipful moments. Like when I'm praying, I'm earnestly praying.
When you're singing,
when I'm doing those things. But to have worship, I have to find other ways to worship, which is very difficult because most churches are on Sunday.
All right.
And I'm busy.
And you're busy. Your schedule is full.
Yeah. So.
But that's why I think it's important when you do get a weekend off, that, which is rare. I don't care what anybody says. It's rare because I'm with you. That you do find some place to worship.
And we always do go to church.
We always do go to church.
Which is funny because growing up, you were a PK, and when your dad had weekends off, you didn't go to church.
Right.
Like, I feel like he just needed a disconnect.
Oh, yeah.
I always go to church. We always find a church. And it's funny because I remember when we were in Pennsylvania on a weekend, we went to church and the people were so excited that they had visitors. They were on us like cheese on macaroni.
Absolutely.
And then he said, so where are you guys from? Like, how'd you find out about us? And I said, well, actually, I am a pastor. We're here visiting. And you could just watch them deflate like, oh man.
Yeah.
It was like, what happened? Yeah. So but yeah, we always do go to church. Yep.
Okay. Well, I was sorry to make your podcast a little bit longer.
No, that was a good question. Except, good luck dodging the AV bullet.
Yeah. I'm sure they got some really good people over there.
They do. They do. They have wonderful folks.
All right. So how do you want to go out again?
Well, as always,
give
them heaven.
That's awesome. Quit hitting my hand, Pebbles.
Thanks for tuning in to Pastors and People Too. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe wherever you listen. It helps us reach more awesome folks like you. Drop us a 5-star rating if we've earned it, and let us know your thoughts in the comments or on social media. Catch you next time, and remember to give them heaven.